so as I was saying just a few moments ago, the format of the session is Justin's going to give a presentation on budget setting. And then there's going to be an opportunity to ask some questions around the themes that Justin has discussed. And then hopefully after about half an hour or so, we're going to be opening up the meeting for pretty much anything else you want to discuss that's going on in your councils, anything that perhaps you'd like to sort of run past any of your colleagues or even myself as the county advisor. And then we'll just wrap up with a little bit of housekeeping at the end, because I've got some ideas about sort of future meetings, and I just want to make sure that everybody's okay about that. So right then, well, in that case, I think over to you, Justin. Do you want to take us away on budget? Actually, everybody, just for those of you who are not familiar with him, it's not particularly fair for me to introduce Justin without giving him some form of introduction. Justin, in a previous life, was the county officer at Somerset. Justin has also been a council chair and is a trained council clerk, and also does a lot of the training that we put on, the online training that we put on at the association, and indeed has done an in-person session for us at last year's county conference, where Justin ran a session on election preparation. But budget setting is one of the courses that he does run for us. You will be able to see that there will be courses on the WALC website, and also Justin will be speaking again at this year's county conference on the subject of budget setting. But you're going to get a sort of a synopsis, a little sneaky peek at what Justin's going to be covering at that session. So Justin, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ian, and thank you for having me back so quickly to one of these chair sessions. It was kind of an on the hoof thing we came up with, but very useful, I think, as well. So good afternoon to you all, and I'm going to talk just a little bit around the idea of budgeting, and maybe try to get you to look at the budget process in a slightly different way to perhaps you would normally do so. So I'm not going to PowerPoint you to death today, largely because I've been away for a few days, and I got back late last night, so I thought, no, I'm not going to do a PowerPoint today. It's only 15 minutes, so let's do something different for a change. So I'm going to basically raise 10 key points, I think, around budgeting. And then we can maybe discuss those. And if you want to go into other aspects, then very happy to take questions on that as well. I'm going to expand on a number of the points I make today at the September WALC conference when I talk about budgeting there. So some of the issues I'm going to talk about here will be expanded upon there. And if you want a more nuts and bolts type approach to looking at budgets, then we're doing a couple of online sessions towards the end of September. One, I think, is daytime and one's evening. So hopefully we'll catch both councillors and clerks potentially for that. So plenty of opportunities for you to engage in budget-related activities over the coming months. So the first point is a very simple one, really. Why do we budget within our councils? Why do we go through this annual process? Well, there's two key reasons here, really. Firstly, we have to. It's one of those key mandatory duties that every council has to approve a budget and agree the level of precepts, the amount it's going to be raising for its income through council tax each year. And obviously, in order to work out how much we want from the council tax take, we're going to have to calculate that somehow through doing a budget for our councils. But obviously, the other key reason is it then gives us a set of figures to work against in that particular financial year, so we can actually keep a track of our spending as councils to make sure we actually are on track as far as that budget is concerned. Because it's a mandatory duty, it's one of those activities that the whole council ultimately has to approve. So it's not one of the things you can delegate to a finance committee or the clerk to do. It's something that the council ultimately will have to agree, both the budget and the level of precept you're going to be asking for as part of the council tax. So that's why we do it, because ultimately we have to. Second point I'd like to raise is that how not to do it, really. So in the past, it's fair to say I've come across councils whose approach to budgeting is we don't want to increase the precept. And that's for starting point. And that may seem a very nice thing to do from the point of view of your residents and not wanting them to inflict them with unnecessarily undue amounts of council tax, but it can cause problems for your council down the line. So when we budget, we really do need to look at what income we're likely to be getting in, which for many of you is probably going to be nothing apart from the precept, and what we actually want to spend over the course of a year, not try and shoehorn our budget into fitting a certain number, i.e. what we asked for last year, because things do change. Inflation exists, contract inflation exists, staff salaries go up annually. There are things you do need to take into account and look at. And unless you're sort of in a community that's maybe had a huge growth in housing, in which case you may be able to get away with effectively charging the same amount per household because there are more households paying it, there's likely that there's going to be some need for some increase year on year to meet future needs and demands. I've seen quite a few councils through the years, and this includes district and county councils and unitary authorities who've got themselves in trouble by freezing their precept on a regular basis. Sooner or later, something will happen and your luck will run out and things will catch up with you. And then you'll be faced with one potential huge hike all in one go, which will be more difficult and perhaps more unpalatable, both for yourselves and for your residents. So do you use the budget process as an opportunity to actually reflect and look at what your actual needs are, not what you would like them to be in terms of an overall figure. The next point is sort of, I think we do at times need to reframe the way we think about percentage increases as a sector. So the first thing here is that our part of the council tax bill is very small at the end of the day. So stripping out parish precepts, the average Band D council tax bill in Wiltshire is £1,886.99, and in Swindon it's £2,198.04. So quite big sums. Nationally, the average parish Band D precept is around £83. So as a percentage of that overall council tax bill, the amount we're talking about is quite small. For many of you, it's going to be 5% or less of the council tax, even for the larger councils in Wiltshire. And you've got some very big spending councils in Wiltshire, with bandies around the £200–300 mark even. But even then, you're looking at around 15% of the overall bill that people are going to be paying. And yet there's a huge difference, I think, in what people actually get for their money from you guys at the end of the day. Because year on year, they're going to be paying more and more to Wiltshire Council, for instance. That's inevitable. It's going to be a 5% increase year on year, including the social care levy. That's pretty much a cert now, with the changes that the government's making to local government financing. And they're not going to see anything new for that. There's going to be more cuts. All councils are struggling at the moment with those big services they have to deliver, and their costs are going up year on year, and the amount they can get in is not keeping pace with that. So there are going to be cuts, whatever happens. You'll be paying more and you'll be getting less ultimately. Whereas in our sector, generally, if you're going to be raising the precept considerably, you're going to be doing something new with that money. You're going to be safeguarding and taking on a service and maybe upgrading it, or building a new facility or play area or recreational ground or something like that. People are going to actually see something for their money at the end of the day. They're going to be able to go out and use it and see it and touch it and play with it potentially. So it's very, very different. People are paying more year on year and getting less from other service providers. But from our sector, when we step up and raise our precepts, generally they're going to be seeing more for that. They're going to be able to go out and use it. So also, when you look at percentages as well, what may look like a big percentage is actually a small amount at the end of the day. So try and look at it not perhaps as a percentage, but as an amount per month. It might just be a couple of quid a month, or 50p a week or something like that. What would that actually buy somebody on the ground? So if you're basically can say to somebody that, yes, we've had to raise the precept, but it's the equivalent of a pint of beer a month, something like that, it's going to be a bit more palatable. So try and think about percentage increases in a slightly different way would be my advice, because we can get a bit fixated on them at times. Next point is that we now live in a local government environment where if we want to get things done in our local communities, we're going to have to accept the fact that we're probably going to have to do it ourselves and pay for the majority of it ourselves as well. I've been sort of kicking around in local government since sort of around 2002. And back in those days, we still had district councils and we had all sorts of grant giving bodies within local authorities. And there's lots of money swinging around to do the sort of nice to do projects at parish level. And you wouldn't have to do all the fundraising yourselves and put it on the precepts. You would be able to get out and maybe get even 70–80% of the money from external funding sources. But those days are gone and they're not coming back. It's fair to say we've seen the glory days of local government. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government was one of the big losers in the spending review that's just been done by government. And it's not going to be the housing bit of that that's going to suffer the most. It's going to be the community side. So funding to local government is going to be squeezed. There's some talk about it, a new formula being introduced. And yes, the formula does need, funding formula does need overhauling, but it's likely that money is going to go into more deprived urban areas than into rural areas. We're going to see some challenges. And whilst in Wiltshire, you're in a better place than Somerset, for instance, where we've got significant underlying problems in our local authorities' budget. £100 million black hole that's been sitting there for some years now for a number of different reasons. Wiltshire's position is slightly better, but you still have those huge cost pressures in terms of adult social care, children's social care, special needs education. These are really big budget lines that are going to eat up most of principal authorities' spending power in the coming years. So we do, if we want to get things done, they want to see things locally, we're going to have to step up and we're going to have to be prepared to pay for it as well. And our residents aren't daft. If they want to see stuff, they know it's going to have to be paid for. And as I sort of mentioned earlier, I think the more locally you tax, because you're more likely to see something for it, generally speaking, the more acceptable it's going to be to people. My fifth point kind of moves on from that in terms of use the budget process. If it's going to be difficult and you're thinking about a significant increase, do talk to your community. You're not obliged to. There's no mandatory duty to consult if you're going to raise your precept by more than X% or anything like that. But if it's going to be a big increase, it's probably a good idea to at least alert the community to what you're thinking of doing. So if you're going to be providing a new facility, you'll probably have already talked to the community about that. But if there are other reasons why you're suddenly going to have to raise your budget, then get the message out there. Use the parish newsletter or your social media channels or your website or something like that, and give thought maybe to holding some form of public meeting as well, so you can outline to people why change is necessary and why you're looking potentially at a large budget increase. In my own council, when we were doing our budget back end of last year, we had some maintenance liabilities that were drawn to our attention, because we're responsible for lots of walls and some historic buildings and listed monuments and all sorts of things. And we commissioned some structural surveys on various things, and the results came back, and there was a lot of stuff that needed doing over the next few years, basically. So we were looking at about a 30% precept hike, and that's sort of also including things we were going to have to do, which Somerset Council were no longer going to be willing to do. So we got the message out through our usual sort of channels. We have a regular sort of monthly column in the parish newsletter. We let people know well in advance where our thinking was on the budget. But we did also arrange a sort of public meeting so that people would come along, see a presentation as to why we were thinking of doing what we were thinking of doing, and get the opportunity to ask any questions. Only 2 people came along, it's fair to say. And that's generally been my experience. Whenever we've sort of, in my own council or councils I've worked with, there's been a need to increase the precept significantly, there's not been a huge public outcry at the end of the day. Usually a sort of degree of indifference, and Actually, I've been struck by a number of people who've said to me through the years that they're actually quite shocked that such a small percentage of their council tax actually goes to the local parish council, whereas they see absolutely nothing apart from the bins being emptied, perhaps for the remaining bulk of the amount they're paying out each month. So have a conversation with the community. It's an opportunity. You probably won't find a huge degree of opposition at the end of the day, but it's polite, and it at least gets that dialogue flowing, if you like. My sixth point, and it's something I tend to feed into absolutely everything I talk about, is have a plan as a council about what you want to do over the next year or few years. It might just be a side of A4 that you cobble together as a group of members, or it may be that you do a sort of community plan where you go out and survey the local community and work out what people want to see and what they like about where they live, what they don't like, the kind of services they would like to see, or the kind of services they really want you to protect and support, things like that. You'll find you'll get an awful lot of information and engagement. There'll be some surprises as well about that. And having a plan of some sort gives you something to work towards as a council, ultimately. And if it's a plan that you've consulted the community on, it's a very useful tool for accessing what funding is still out there from other organisations, because they'll always want to see clear evidence of community involvement and consultation when you're applying for grants. So having a plan will help you. It will help you to budget. Again, in my own council, we tend to do a plan every sort of 5 to 10 years. We're just starting on our next one at the moment and preparing a community survey to go out. And that will give us as a council something to work towards, but it will also give a number of the other groups that are active in our community something to work towards as well, because it's not just all about us as a council doing it. It's about looking at the community as a whole, working with all the groups that form part of that community and getting them to fulfill particular elements of the plan. So having a plan really does help, and it does make budgeting easier. Next point's one perhaps that we can relate to all shapes and sizes of council, because sometimes in the past I've talked to very small parish councils, and other than sort of paying for the clerk and the things they have to pay for to keep the council going each year, that's basically all they spend their money on. But even small things can have a big impact in our communities. So even something as simple as putting a bench in a nice spot where people regularly walk, that can have a positive impact. Gives people somewhere to have a rest and somewhere to enjoy the view. It's good for their well-being. Putting in a few grit bins here and there can make a huge impact if we do get wintry weather to road safety and people's confidence. Putting a bin in a place that's perhaps a little bit prone to being littered can improve the natural environment, improve the look of your community. People will appreciate it. There are lots of little small things we can do as councils, including giving money to other bodies to put on events and activities in our community that needn't cost the earth, but will be appreciated and will make a difference, and will make a positive difference to people's lives. So it doesn't have to be all about big things like play areas and skate parks and community centres and things like that. Even the little things can have a really positive impact in our communities, and any shape and size of council can make financial provision to do that. My eighth point is, do use the budget process as an opportunity to take a look at your reserves. So all of you should have at least 3 to 6 months of general reserve within your finances, just in case anything crops up unexpectedly, anything goes wrong. So there's some money there that you can fall back on should you need to do so. So normally that's 3 to 6 months. Sometimes it can be more than 6 months if you are a council that's reliant on a lot of external income streams potentially. COVID was a good test for some larger councils there, because they lost their car parking income or their income from leisure centres or theatres or some of the services they provide. So also take into account the risk of exposure, if you like, should you lose some of your other income sources. But for most councils, 3 to 6 months is going to be sufficient as a general reserve for you to dip into in an emergency. You can also have earmarked reserves. So these are things you're putting aside maybe for a more longer term project or for something, or for future eventualities. Some larger councils, for instance, that tend to have by-elections if councillors are resigned, for instance, will have an election fund so that they've got money available should they have to pay for the costs of a by-election, which tend to be quite expensive these days. Other councils will put money aside to replace a facility. So if you've got a play area, well, in 10, 15 years' time, that's probably going to need quite a lot of the equipment replacing, and having money put aside year on year to help towards that cost is going to help you down the line and prevent you from having to go for a huge precept jump potentially in order to replace that play area when its natural life comes to an end. And you can think very long term with earmarked reserves as well. So in my own council, for instance, we're starting to put money aside for future land for a new cemetery. Then we've probably got 20, 30 years at least in our existing site, but we're going to need somewhere else in the not too distant future. So putting some money aside towards that is something we do on a regular basis. We also have funds set aside for our multi-use games area, our play areas now, our car parks, so that when bigger maintenance bills come along, we've got some money there that we can fall back on. And just because you're earmarking money doesn't mean it's going to be kept there in perpetuity. As long as the council agrees, you can move it from pot to pot. Council's priorities may change, and something you're working towards now is something you may not want to do in 5 years' time. So look at that as well. Particularly if you've got lots of money in your general reserve, more than 12 months, for instance, then you ought to be thinking, well, actually, we need to earmark some of this. Otherwise, people might start asking why we've got so much money unallocated to a specific purpose. Similarly, my 9th point, do use a budget as well to look at your staffing needs as well going forward. So it's fair to say it's still often the case, particularly in small councils, that the clerk ends up working more hours than they are contracted to do. That is not in any way, shape or form unusual. So using the budget time to have a conversation with the clerk about working arrangements is good practice. But also if there are new things you want to do, and let's face it, we've just had elections, so you're going to have some new councillors involved, and they're probably going to have new ideas, and you may be thinking about some projects over the next financial year that you want to be looking at. And that's going to have an impact on your staff time. So do you have the hours available to your existing staff, whether it's just one part-time clerk or multiple officers, if you're a larger town council, for instance? Do you actually have the capacity to deliver what you want to deliver as a council? And if the answer to that is no, then you may need to be looking at your staffing arrangements, your staffing structure, or the hours that you have available to your staff. Anything you want to do that's new is likely to have an impact. So don't forget to take that into account when you're looking at your budgets. My final point as well is when we budget, we tend to look at it on a year-by-year basis. We don't want to be sort of any bolder than that, more often than not. But my last point would be maybe try and look to the future a little bit. So rather than budgeting for 1 year, maybe we should be trying to look at things over a 3-year cycle. So our principal authorities are supposed to look at it over 3 years. They rarely do because they're firefighting all the time. But there's no reason, if some of the other points we've talked about are in place, you've got a plan as a council, you know roughly what you want to do, then you can prepare. You don't have to do everything all at once either. So having a sort of 3-year budget where you're perhaps looking at the things you want to do over that particular period of time and slotting it into various years might make you help to plan a little bit more effectively as well financially, so that you can avoid any of those perhaps big increases within just one particular financial year. So that's just some tips. Hopefully, I mean, personally, I think budget setting is one of the more fun activities we do in councils. It's certainly more fun than audit, but then virtually everything is. So hopefully it's an opportunity for you to take a good hard look at the way you're doing things now and how you may want to do things differently in the future as well. So I think I've used up my allotted time, Ian, so I will stop there, and but happy to take any questions.
That's excellent. Thank you so much for that, Justin.